Have I mentioned that I suffer from like crippling indecisiveness? Yeah, decision paralysis is a thing, so this has been a chore. Hey makeup friends, today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 palettes from 2020, and my goodness was this difficult. First of all, I bought far too many palettes in all of 2020, so going through them all and picking the top was very difficult in and of itself, but then actually going ahead and ranking them number 10 to number 1, it took some time, but you know, I invested that energy and here we are. So without further ado, let me welcome you back to my channel, or if you are new here, then welcome. My name is Kara. I am a 40-year-old working mother of 2, and makeup is my passion. I get so much joy out of it. On my channel, we like to mix beauty, brains, and the occasional F-bomb, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, please go ahead and subscribe. All right, we're gonna dive into it with one honorable mention before we get to the nitty gritty. So the honorable mention is going to go to ColourPop and Raw Beauty Christie. This is the At Forest Sight palette. And the only reason why I haven't actually been able to rank it is because I haven't yet tried it. But I want to give it a shout out because the color story is so very beautiful and the packaging is just adorable. I mean, I'm not a fan of mushrooms whatsoever, but somehow it works for this palette. Somehow it's just completely spot on. Even the back of the palette is cute. I love that we really have a lot of options to work with here, so I just wanted to give that one a shout out. I can't speak to how it performs or anything of that sort, but just from an aesthetic purpose, there it is. All right, so now here we go with my top 10. Now, when I went through all of my palettes, and my God, there's a lot, but when I went through them all, I was really looking at what are the palettes that I keep going back to? What are the ones that when the cameras are off and I'm getting ready for my day or getting ready for the occasional date night that I have, what are the palettes that I'm reaching for? And so that really did help me narrow the field down. And then I carried that through as well when I was actually ranking them. So I'm really trying to look at which palettes do I think that I am going to get the most use out of or that I have got the most use out of. And I make that distinction simply because some of these are very new to my collection, but they have become instant favorites. You'll see as we get there. So number 10 goes to this palette here. This is from BPerfect and Stacey Marie MUA, and this is the Carnival III Love Tahiti palette. I feel like I just spoke about this fairly recently in a video, but I can't remember which video it was. Not helpful. Regardless, you can see the palette here. It's massive, so that does play into my ranking it lower in the field here, simply because I have to have an idea of what I want to do before I will reach for this palette. This isn't just a palette that I'll reach off the shelf, open it up, and then become inspired. I'm sure a lot of people would, but for me it becomes overwhelming. So I have to have an idea of, yes, I want to do a bright green, or yes, I want to do purple, or whatever the case is, and then I can find the shadows in here. But this isn't a palette that I can just open up and be like, ooh, I can see this and this and this and this working together. It just overwhelms me in that sense. But the performance of this palette is also fantastic. These mattes are beautifully pigmented. They do blend out really nicely. You have some really bright colors. There's some nice, rich, deep colors for grounding. There are some neutral options. There's some that are edging towards neon, not quite there, but edging towards it. And overall, I think if you're looking for versatility in a palette, you really don't have to look much further than this because it really does have a little bit of everything. Number 9 took me by surprise. When I first saw these palettes release, I was just I just wrote them off. I didn't really give them much thought, and then I saw reviews coming up and I kept seeing people giving them rave reviews, and so I got sucked in and I purchased one of them and it knocked my bloody socks off. And that would be BH Cosmetics and their Sweet Shop palettes. This one in particular is the Cherry on Top palette, so this is the red one. Now, I don't tend to reach for red shadows on a daily basis or even a frequent basis, but when I do, it makes my eyes look super green, and it just is so complementary to my eye color that I really should wear red more often. And I find that there's enough variety of tones in here that you can get a lot of depth in the look, and there is a lot of versatility with these like shimmer shadows here and then the matte shadows over here. And I find there's a lot of richness in here so that the reds, like particularly this red right here, when you apply it and blend it out, it stays red. It doesn't like blend into a pinky sort of shade, which a lot of red matte shadows do, I find. These ones, they stand up. The shimmers are beautiful. I'll swatch a couple of them for you. How's that? I forgot to do that with Stacey Marie, but that's okay. So I mean, this shadow right here is just so pretty. Oh my God, I need somebody to teach me how to use this camera. I played around with the setting, which I think it makes the actual video look better, but then when I hold stuff up, it's so washed out, and I've been playing around with it and I don't know what I'm doing. Anyways, aside from that, there's the three of them just swatched out. I like BH Cosmetics, don't sleep on them. They are so good. I don't know what it is. I think it's just their price point that I immediately just assume that they're not great quality shadows, but I was proven wrong. I was absolutely proven wrong. I'm so glad that I picked this up because this opened the door to other BH palettes for me, and they're really not to be slept on because the quality of their shadows is so good. Who knew? I honest to God did not know that they were that good. I don't know if this is something new for them or if they've always had fantastic quality, but 2020 was BH's year. I will say that for sure. And if you can get your hands on any of these Sweet Shop palettes, I highly recommend them. Another brand that was new to me in 2020 is Kaleidos makeup, and I went hard for their palettes. I now have all of their palettes with the exception of the neon one that they had because it's no longer available. But in those palettes, one of them did float to the top for me, and it's this one here. This is the Sashimi City palette, and it's just a neutral palette, but I find that there's a little bit of a twist to it, and it's these shimmer shadows here that really can help to play up the undertones of the mattes. So over here, they're a little bit more pink based, whereas over here, they're a little more neutral, but I really like these two shimmer shadows, and I really find, like I said, that they just play up those undertones. They're so pretty, and they're super sparkly. They're super beautiful. Like they're almost, you know what, I would say that they're duochromatic. I'll hold it back here so that the lights don't fade them out. But like this one here is like a peachy kind of gold shade, and then this one is like it's what I think of when I think of iridescent. Like I know that other shades can be iridescent, but it's like that purpley pink blue kind of shift to it. It's just so pretty, like with a hint of green in it as well. Like it's so gorgeous. The two of these are so beautiful, and the mattes, like the Kaleidos formula is impeccable. It is so beautiful. So if you find one of their palettes with a color story that speaks to you, I highly recommend their formula because you will not be disappointed with it. All right, I'm going to talk about spots 7 and 6 together because I have really struggled with this, and I cannot determine which one comes ahead of the other. So there's two neutral palettes here. One is the Natasha Denona Glam, and the other is the Side by Side palette from Nabla. Both of them are beautiful palettes in my estimation. Both of them perform beautifully. The mattes, pigmented, blend well, no patchiness, no issues in that regard. They don't like get all muddied on the eye by the end of the day. The shimmer shadows in both of them, beautiful, a lot of like good reflection off of them. I like a more foiled kind of metallic shadow as opposed to really subtle soft shimmers, and both of these deliver in that category. So this one, if you haven't seen the shades, there is the Natasha Denona. It is hailed as a cool tone palette. I would argue that it's squarely neutral with some cool options. I mean, when I look at it, I don't think, oh, you're super cool. Like it just, I don't know. I could be wrong in that regard, but I mean, it's certainly not a warm toned palette, but I don't think just because it's not leaning super warm that by definition means that it's cool. I think it's very much a neutral kind of palette, but I also think it's very, very beautiful, and it's a palette that, while there's a lot that looks very similar in here, I do think that there is enough difference in these shades that you can get a lot of different looks out of here. There is versatility in this palette. However, there's not necessarily as much versatility as there is in the side-by-side palette. You can see it just from this distance. I mean, you've got black and gray over here, definitely more warm toned shades in this row here, and then some more neutral options. Got a nice bright brassy gold over here. But they're both just beautiful palettes to work with. I have no regrets purchasing either of them, but I really can't tell which one is in spot, what are we at, 6? Yeah, which one's at spot 10, 9, 8, 7, or 6. There we are, 7 or 6. These ones are very much on par with each other, to me at any rate, and I really do like both of them, and I can't. So therefore, 6 and 7 are being treated equally. All right. In 5th place, then, we have a quad from Tom Ford. I hate how expensive this is. Like, I truly hate the price point on here, and I hate how much I love it, because I know that he has more than one quad, and now I keep like side-eyeing them and thinking like, are you as good as your sister over here? Because she's effing amazing. This one is in the shade De La Crème. Again, very neutral. You're going to see a pattern establishing here. I'm a neutral girl. I love colorful shadows. I do. But on a day-to-day basis, I reach most often for neutrals. And that's why when I looked through all these, I was really looking for what are the palettes that I keep reaching for over and over again. And so we're going to see more neutrals than colorful palettes, that's for sure. But there are the shades in the quad. You've got 2 mattes and 2 shimmer shadows. Not super foiled as I typically like, but it holds up throughout the day. So I tend to go into my crease with this one, deepen up the outer V with this shade here, and draw that along the lower lash line. I usually put this one all over my lid and then use this as an inner corner highlight. And what I really, really love with this palette is that it's just so effortless. Like, they basically blend themselves. They're so smooth. They just, I'm not saying words properly. Here, I may as well swatch the last one since there's only 4 of them. It's just, they're soft shadows in terms of the impact on the eye, but that's not to say that they're underwhelming or disappointing by any stretch. They're just like, this is the perfect going to the office quad for me. It's one of those when I wake up, I've had a crappy night's sleep, I haven't had my coffee yet, the pistons aren't all firing, if that's even the analogy. I don't know what a piston is. I don't have to think about it, and I don't have to put in a ton of energy. So if I'm running out of time, I can still do a complete eye look, and it's not going to take a ton of work to blend everything out. And this deeper brown is not going to get super stubborn and bunchy and refuse to blend or get all patchy and stupid on me. This is just one of those quads that I can just reach for. I know that time after time after time, my eyes are going to look amazing. I can't get a ton of looks out of it. There's only 4 shadows, but I don't care. It's like a staple palette in my collection, and I have been reaching for it over and over again. Now we're on to number 4, and this is a palette that I have talked about a bunch of times. Any guesses on what a neutral palette is that I have been loving for months? Put it in the comments, pause, go take a guess. We'll see if you're right. The Artist Couture Supreme Nudes palette. I don't even know what else to say about this palette. I have talked about it so many times. I effing love this palette. I really do. It just, again, it's one of those brainless kind of palettes. Like, obviously there's more options than in the Tom Ford quad, but regardless of what you choose, they're going to work together. You don't have to put a ton of thought into pairing the colors to make sure that they're complementary to each other, that they're going to blend nicely with each other, any of that kind of thing. Which honestly, from time to time, I don't mind doing. But on a consistent, like, day-to-day going to the office kind of basis, I don't want to be spending that kind of time in the morning really fussing with my eyeshadow. I don't have the time for it, and I don't have the energy for it. So that's where I reach for palettes like this, where I know the performance is going to be top notch. I know that no matter what shades I reach for, that they're going to work together. And I know that by the end of the day, my eyes aren't going to look like a bag of dicks. These shadows stay put all day, and they look every bit as good at the end of the day as they do when I first apply it. So I have talked about this palette so many times. It should not come as any surprise that it's ranked as highly as it is. Again, there's just a few of my favorite shades that I am constantly showing you guys, especially that deep metallic olive. Oh my God, bury me in that color. It's beautiful. But there's a reason why I keep busting this palette out and telling you guys about it, and it's because it's fucking good. And now we are on to the top 3. These are all fairly new to me, but they were fast favorites. I fell in love immediately with all 3 of these palettes, and I feel confident in their placement. I really do. I don't think that this is one of those placements where 3 months from now I'm gonna look back and be like, ugh, what were you thinking? No, these palettes, they're banging. They are so, so good. So number 3, Vieve, the Essential Palette. Again, I'm beating a dead horse by saying that it's one of those palettes that, again, you can just pair any shades and it's gonna look amazing. But it's true. But I just, like, when it's called an essential palette, it truly is. Like, it has everything you need. It's got a cooler toned up here. It's got the black to deepen up any look that you're going for. It's got some warmer options to really add warmth. How else do you say that? I don't know. It's got 3 shimmers that are all in the same kind of family. Like, they're all gold based, but that means that they're going to work with all of the mattes that are in here, and they're at like distinct tones. So it's not like they're going to be a one-trick pony. Like, they look very different one from the next. I'll just swatch those 3 for you. So there's versatility just built in. Even though there's only 3 shimmers, they are very different from each other. I find that sometimes with neutral palettes, they'll give you a number of metallic shades, but they all kind of look really similar, especially once they're applied. That's not the case here. All of these shadows are distinct one from the next. And then the packaging as well. Like, it's just so minimalist but chic. Like, I love the whole aesthetic of it. And this is one of those releases. Like, I got one of the lipsticks and I got the palette, obviously. But it's enough that now I'm excited to see what else Jamie Genevieve does with her brand, because if she can match this quality with other color stories, I'm going to be there for it 100%, because the quality on this one has blown me away, especially for a first product release. I'm so impressed with the brand. I'm so impressed with this palette. Now, when I sat down to do my makeup today, I thought that I was using my number 1 palette. And then I looked at my top 10 spread out, and it got knocked down to spot 2, which is saying something about the number 1 palette. It really is. But the number 2 palette for me in all of the palettes that I purchased in 2020 comes from BH Cosmetics. It's the Blueberry Muffin palette. Who knew? It is, I truly hate that it has this iridescent, because you just can't really see the shades properly. That's the only thing that drives me crazy. But that's just because I'm trying to show it on a camera. That has nothing to do with anything. But I love the inclusion of the neutral shades in here. So these ones up here and down here, even some of these shimmer shadows in here. This is like a matte, super dark navy, almost edging towards black, but not quite there, with a little bit of glitter in it. It's so easy to work with. I mean, I have seen these kind of shades in so many palettes, and the glitter gets all chunky and the like matte base just isn't there. It's patchy, you can't really build it up. It's just a pain in the ass to work with. And that is not the case with this at all. Likewise, this really deep navy blue metallic down here, I have that under my lower lash line today. It's beautiful. Like, these shades are fantastic. I really cannot overstate how good this palette is. I am just so impressed with it. I love the depth of the tones in the blues in here, no matter which ones you use. Even if you go with this lightest blue that's down here, it's not going to give you that like weird 80s revival kind of look. Like, it's not icy on the eye at all. They're really nice shades, and the depth of them makes this a really user-friendly and approachable palette. Honest to God. I kind of hope that Santa gives everybody this palette for Christmas. I mean, it's like $18, I think, and they constantly have sales going on, like constantly. You can get this down to like $10 sometimes, but it's, even at the $18, it's totally worth the price point. I mean, this is one of those things that if I had known just how good it was going into it and it had been priced at $30, I would have gladly paid it, because it's worth it. It's, if you don't have it, go and get it. It is so good. Okay, so then you see my love for that palette. You must be wondering what number one is. My number one palette for 2020. Drum roll, please. Maybe I should do this. That's a weak drum roll. I apologize. Here we go. Plain Jane from Adept Cosmetics. It's the most ironically named palette I have ever encountered, because this is anything but plain. Oh my God. I cannot describe how beautiful this is. I am going to link my video doing eye swatches of this, because looking at it in the pan does it no justice. Looking at pictures on Instagram, no justice. These shades are just so multifaceted. So they're all duochromes or multichromes, as the case may be. They are all shimmery shadows. They are all gorgeous. Like, I cannot pick a favorite. Just as soon as I think that I have, I'm like, oh, but wait, there's this one. These are just some of the most stunning shades I've ever encountered. I wish the camera would do it justice. Oh my goodness. You can see just how reflective they are. They are silky smooth. I mean, when I saw them, I thought they might feel a little dry, a little chunky, because there is this like glittery-ishness to them, but they're not pressed glitters at all. They feel so silky smooth. Like, there's almost, if I say they're creamy, does that make sense? Like, they're not cream shadows, but they feel very emollient. They just slide right onto the eyelids, and yet, despite how easy that application is, they last all day, and they don't like end up just trapped in the creases on my eyelids. I'm gonna geek out here, but like, they are so fucking beautiful. I cannot get over this palette. And it's just like, it's not a standalone palette to me, so it's not one that I would just grab this and like blend a few shades and put them up here and around, whatever. But this is one of those palettes that I'm going to get so much use out of, especially pairing it with these other neutral palettes that I have. I mean, it could take this Tom Ford quad to the next level. I could just use the two mattes in there, throw one of these on the lid, and put maybe this one here into the inner corner, and it's going to be a showstopper. Like, these are all incredible, incredible shadows. I am just so incredibly happy with this palette, and I feel like I say that about all of these. Like, I'm so incredibly happy. Don't take a shot every time I say that. Please don't. But I have been impressed with Adept since I first tried their products. Their diamond finish in particular, it's right up my alley. It's one of those like hyper foiled kind of finishes, and I absolutely love that. But this is their new iridescent formula. Like, this should be called the Hold On To Your Butt palette, because it should have a warning on it. It really should, because you see the pictures of it online, you're like, yeah, it looks kind of pretty, that's cool, whatever. But it's not until you actually feel them and see the reflect and just really dive into this and play with it that you can really see just how unique and how different these shades are. And the fact that they put them all into one palette, I think, is just so good. Such a smart move, because if they had just sold them all individually, I think people would be seriously missing out, because most people are not going to go out and buy 12 single shadows. But curated into this little palette here, fucking top notch. I am just such a huge fan of this, and I'm so happy for Adept because I think they have an absolute winner on their hands with this palette. So there you have it, guys. Those are my top 10 palettes for 2020. Just taking a look at them, I can see like the year kind of started off a little slow and then like hit its fever pitch around the September mark, just based on when these palettes released. But when I love something, I know that I love it. And so I'm not concerned about the fact that like these ones are really new to my collection. They deserve the spot in the top 3. They really do. So I would love to hear from you in the comments what some of your favorite palettes from this year were. I just get a kick out of that kind of stuff because maybe I have something that you guys really love and I need to take a second look at it. But that aside, it is time for me to wrap this video up. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will see you in my next one. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.